different, and that the test should produce the same results. Internal consistency is important because if it says it's a reading test, is it testing reading and not science? That's important as well. Validity, there's several different ways that validity is measured, but basically it's in the evidence. A test is not valid. It's the uses of the test for which we hope we can find evidence to support that particular use. Construct validity is something that deals with the underlying construct. If it was reading, comprehension as a construct, there ought to be evidence that the items are asking students to read passages and answer questions about them. Next slide. Criterion validity, can the results be reported at different levels as standards or the subcomponents of standards and items to a variety of audiences? And sometimes there's predictive validity. That is often the reason why we give the 11th grade test. Our goal is to see if kids are ready for college, to succeed in credit-bearing courses. And both the ACT and the College Board have data on that. Comparability, can the results be compared to previous years and future years? And that's important because one of the functions of a large-scale assessment at a state level is to monitor the overall performance of the students in North Dakota as well as in individual districts. So comparability is important. And in some cases, we want to compare results to other states that use the same instrument. And can we do that? Other things that we may be concerned about is the level of our content standards. Do they include thinking, conceptual understanding, problem solving? And so those are things that we can probe again with the web alignment tool. The peer review guidance that came out in September outlines a number of criteria that states will have to address and provide evidence of in the peer review process, which will take place this year. It's my understanding that because North Dakota is changing its assessment, however, it will not have to report on the previous year's test if it changes it going forward. Then the new test would be subject to peer review a year from now. Well, I know that one of the things that you've been talking about is the use of a college entrance test. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that, having had some personal experience in that. First of all, there are several options that states have adopted across the country and still are using. There are, in some cases, a general 11th grade assessment. It's the same as, say, a general 8th grade assessment, except it's measuring high school standards. There's no intent that it be aligned to a specific course like Algebra 1. It's not necessarily designed to be predictive of college. It's a retrospective assessment, if you will, just like the end of the 8th grade test measures what kids should have been taught and learned in 8th grade. The 11th grade general assessment looks at what students might have been taught in grades 9 through 11, and have they learned that. End of course exams are popular in states where students may take and be required to pass. In some cases, have to pass in order to get course credit in the course. In other cases, it's just for state accountability purposes. But typically, something like English 10 or Algebra 1, maybe the requirements in English and mathematics for state assessment purposes. The college readiness and career readiness kinds of exams could be something designed to say, are kids ready to succeed in college? Are they ready to take on a career out of high school and be successful at that? And then there are college entrance tests like the ACT or the SAT. The task force seemed to be leaning to the ACT because the ACT has been the exam used within the state. But I wanted to point out that there's been a significant change in college entrance testing in the last few years. And I want to talk about that. You know, as you think about the different reasons why assessments could be used, some states use more than one. And one model is to use an end-of-course exam, not for student accountability, but simply to report the percent passing in each course. Because one of the things that we find in examining kids' success or lack thereof in college is that students have taken the right courses, but the course content didn't match the course title. What purports to be Algebra 1 or Algebra 2 is just warmed over remedial mathematics courses. So kids take these, they get good grades, and then they go off to the university and take the university placement test, and they get placed in remedial courses. And these students are the least likely to graduate from college because they are paying for college credits that don't accrue to their graduation. And in many cases, they've taken on student loan debt in order to do that. So some states give end-of-course exams to assure that the teachers are teaching the appropriate content for the course, but it's not used against the student or against the school for that matter. It's school accountability. But more of a general accountability to make sure, again, as the course content matches the title. They may also then use a college entrance test because for some of the students, that will be motivational. Obviously, the main use of that is to provide data that students are college ready to colleges that they use as part of the selection process. I urge you to think about the purposes that you may want to accomplish at the high school level, because I tend to see states kind of rush into one or the other and not really think through what assessment could do in helping kids be ready for college. I think the two different vendors, ACT and the College Board, have very different programs, and these have changed. And I think for North Dakota, they have pros and cons. And the fact that you've used the ACT for a period of time should not be a reason to continue to use it by itself. A couple of reasons that could be used would be if you think about which system allows kids to be more likely to be ready for university level work, which is the least expensive. I urge you to think about bidding competitively a college entrance exam, because one thing that I've found in the last couple of years, the two vendors, ACT and the College Board, have really sharpened their pencils. And rather than just give you list price, as they did in Michigan in 2006, they're actually either offering things at list price with additional services, or they're actually even cutting their list prices. And this could save you a lot of money. I think that RFP will help you also assess the strengths and weaknesses. For example, the College Board has a national standards aligned college entrance test. It comes with free access to the Khan Academy. As soon as a student takes either the PSAT or the PSAT National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Exam or the SAT, they can link their scores to the Khan Academy and receive free customized learning materials. The College Board is also linked with Road Trip Nation, which provides students with access to career guidance information and helping them think about what career they want to have. ACT has recently announced its own version of an online test preparation program, priced I think at $39.95 with fee waivers for low-income students. And so by competitively bidding it and asking each vendor to define its programs for helping your kids be ready for college, you may get more of a program for less money than simply naming somebody and negotiating a sole source contract.
This is Rick.
I've touched on some of the reasons why high school may administer assessments other than the college entrance exam, allowing for progress monitoring of all students. The College Board, for example, has linked its 8th, 9th, and 10th grade with the SAT, and also worked with some vendors to link the high school assessments the grades 3 through 8 assessment, not unlike what ACT does with Aspire, with its 3 through 8 in high school program. This allows for progress monitoring not only through high school, but in elementary and middle school as well. These assessments have the advantage of perhaps being more aligned to your state standards and being able to use a common vertical scale to track and report student progress allows some more monitoring at the district and state level of student readiness. Again, some pros and cons of using the college entrance test. It simplifies the assessment system. It could be that it's simply one fewer exam that you give. I caution you that neither the ACT or the College Board has a full content-based science assessment. ACT has a process-based science assessment, but in order to assess the third content area, science, we're going to need to continue to have something built in North Dakota. So it may or may not eliminate an assessment, but it at least, versus having a general state assessment and a college entrance test requirement, it would only require one of those. It enables the college-bound students to focus on the college entrance exam instead of the state test and the college entrance test. About 8 states are already using it. There's a precedent set, and I think one of the changes that occurred in the reauthorization of the SEA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, is that college entrance exams are now labeled as an appropriate thing right in the law. So a state like Michigan that had to really jump through a lot of hoops to be approved by the feds to use the ACT now can do so easily, much more easily. It has switched to the College Board SAT and anticipates very little problem in getting approved. The SAT fully aligns to Michigan standards, thus no augmentation in math and language arts is necessary, but at least precedent has been set. It could reduce the cost to at least parents, if not, or taxpayers, and particularly if you competitively bid it, it may reduce your cost as well, because there'll be an incentive for both companies to come to you with cost proposals with pencil sharpening, and hopefully save $1 million or more. And the math, English language, arts, and science content is included. No, science is not included. A science process exam is, but at least in Michigan, we had to augment that with a full science content assessment, which was very similar to what we've been giving before. There's some cons, though, to it. The assessment may not be appropriate for non-college bound students. The kid who knows he or she's not going to school after high school may not be motivated and involved. And it may be, in essence, a shift in who's motivated by the exam. Is the college entrance test one appropriate for all purposes for which you want to use it? That'd be a question you want to ask yourself. It won't give information on how high schools are performing for all students. Well, it will show you a test score for all students, but if you have a different group of students who aren't motivated to work hard on it, it may underestimate their performance. Federal approval is still required, and the state has to show alignment. The thing that's important is that, while you may be doing alignment studies to help you pick the vendor that you want to use, for federal peer review, you have to have an independent alignment study. And that means contracting with an organization. It is possible for North Dakota educators to be used in that process, but the alignment study would have to be run by individuals without any stake in the matter. And if you're weighing the ACT versus the SAT, then also cannot include people with a stake in which choice you make. They need to be independent of the state agency and also independent of any particular vendor. The cost of the college entrance test is more than the cost of regular assessments. In Michigan, the cost went from $19 a student to $85 per student, and now is upwards of $130 per student. So I had to go in the spring of 2007 and asked the legislature for $10 million additional to assess 100,000 students with the ACT, basic products. And I found that the alignment of state standards was less than ideal, and so I ended up having to use augmented math, English language arts, and science items in order to fully align the ACT to the Michigan standards, which were non-college core at that point. Okay. I think that kind of covers our presentation. I'll turn it back over to Barry and Rick, and you can have folks that move. I can hear you.
You can have trouble now with the microphone thing. Folks, do you have any questions at all for Jeff? I'll try to translate that.
Sure.
Go ahead.
My question for Barry, I don't know if it's possible to go back to the bill slide.
We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah.
Questions that we won't know until peer reviewers are really looking at the specific or element. But past history shows that peer reviewers really like to see things sort of put together into one thing if possible, or a collection of things versus having to really scatter about this policy, that thing, or looking at a test administration manual or directions for administrations or whatever, and pull all these different parts together. So I think our strong suggestions would be do pull these things together in do a pet security handbook, or at least the start of one, or look at some way of getting one put together. It will benefit you in the long run.
Okay. Thank you. Barry?
Yes.
Okay, on the build slide, I know you put the cost. I've heard this before. You've said it's the most expensive. I've also heard from at least one education expert I've talked to that it's actually would be the cheapest. It's a fraction of the cost. And I'm wondering, is the reason they're saying cheapest and you're saying is expensive? I just noticed, is that because you're still saying build through a vendor? Is that why it's the most expensive, as opposed to if we build it without a vendor, we're talking about a different financial equation? Did you understand the question?
Well, yes, I do. So, and then there are some states, and North Carolina comes to mind, and maybe Kansas, that use their university system to help them build the assessment. And so the university, I guess, must be either contributing their time or not charging a lot. And so in that case, yes, you can get a cheaper assessment, or in some, I'm not aware of any states that do this for the general assessment, but there are some states that might build their own alternate assessment with their own staff. So yes, if you're using non-vendor resources to build an assessment, it can be inexpensive, but comes with a whole host of other problems. This slide here, our slide, assumes that you're using the more traditional approach of using a vendor to deliver your assessment system, whether it be a build, buy, or hybrid option.
Right, but the expense is because you're using a vendor when it comes to just the cost, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Rick, in Michigan, we developed tests with teachers, but there's a whole series of functions that a vendor is far more efficient on than and most local educators would not know how to conduct content reviews and bias reviews, to edit the materials so that they're understandable by students, to prepare the material for field testing, to score the field test.
If I can, I'm very interested in that. So that what was the idea of that bill? Who would
that's what's worth looking into, I think.
But do you have this person that kind of had this idea and it was going to be cheaper?
And including me, and I mean, I'm not the expert.
Right. And so I'd like, if I could visit with them and see, do they have an idea of who in North Dakota could like make sure that they were translatable into Braille and all sorts of things? Because we don't have this. I mean, this assessment staff is 4 people.
Yeah, I would be glad to look into that if you would want me to do that.
Absolutely. And
I'll get more answers to those more details, but on the broad spectrum, I think there's enough reason to look into it. And
who is that individual you're talking about?
well, I'd rather they give the information to give their name. They're not from North Dakota, but I've talked to plenty of people that are not university people also about this, and so there's agreement amongst a large group of our stakeholders, but they're not. I can't present a dad or a mom as an education expert in this arena. Yeah, but I mean, so it's not like just one person, but I just think it's worth looking into because we'd have a high amount of control, we'd have high quality, adaptability, and I think it'd be better for kids ultimately. But those are good questions. They're worth looking into.
I would just need to make sure that we would have the expertise because we have 25 different
well,
languages.
I think our teachers already do tests. I think that's one good argument is that that's what they do for a living.
Can I toss in here? I'm going to object because to do this, you have to do the field test and the trial test. And from Grand Forks Public Schools, we would have zero part in doing the trial test and the field test because we are already stretched so thin on testing. So I'm going to say, like, I'm going to speak up for our district and say we want to have no part in doing and participating in the field test and the trial test because while you're doing the field test and the trial test, you still have to do our federally mandated test while you're building and doing this. So in the 2 years it's going to take to build and create and run the reviews and trials, you still have to do our federally mandated.
And that's fair. But
so you got to do double.
It's 2 years of the vendor, but there's schools that would be pilot schools. I mean, there's plenty of reasons to do it.
But there's no way
I think it's worth
we
breaking.
have to do the 2 years, whether it would be parents. You'd still have to make sure.
But not every school has to do.
I think you're going to have a hard time finding school districts that say, sign me up for that pilot. Because we're all stretched so thin. So I don't know how many school districts would say, sure, my school district will take that and will sign me up for
You
that.
may be right, but I don't know that. I think it's too early to draw ultimate conclusions that way. I'm not necessarily saying yes or no, but I think there's enough reason to brainstorm about it, and have a good dialogue.
Okay. Was there a question over here? Is there a question over here? Okay. Yes.
I think if we build our own, we're going to have difficulty finding enough valid groups in some areas of our more minority populations. Not when I talk about minority, I'm not talking about ethnicity. I'm talking about, just like she just mentioned, the Braille for the blind, any kinds of other groups that vendors already have taken into consideration and built into a larger population. We don't have those populations here to make our test valid for those students. And I think that would be a consideration I would really object to.
I think we do have those populations.
Okay. What I'm going to do is I want to see if there's any questions for this group of gentlemen before we just, because we're having trouble with the microphone and the speakers. If any of you have a question for them, let's do that now, and then we can have our own conversation. Is this a question for them, Joe?
No, it's a comment about this, but I guess my comments not.
Okay. Questions for the ASG group before we let them go? Anybody else have any questions? Okay, gentlemen, looks like that's it. Can you still hear me? Well, if you can hear me, we're grateful for your time. Thanks for the information. And Barry, I'll be in touch with you sometime after this meeting. So thank you. Okay, yeah. Question or comment?
Yes. Just for that, we've been doing Smarter Balance for all practical purposes. The first 2 years of Smarter Balance is a trial period.
And we went through field tests 3 years ago.
Oh,
yeah. This is
and how may I ask how the field test was done? I mean, what schools were participating in the
It
field
was
test?
voluntary, where there were I'll let the schools that participate.
I was a field test.
Okay.
Larimore was.
So you guys did field test it, which meant that you did field test a trial.
It's very small. We had one middle school partake in the field test. It wasn't our entire district. So,
Okay.
and what's required to write a test is a totally different, if a math teacher writes a test for her class, totally different scenario than if you're writing a standardized test. It's apples to oranges there. So
our schools participated in the field test. I mean, in order to meet the criteria of the standards, just like you have banking standards, in order for it to be, and you use card analogies a lot, in order, automotive industries have their standards. In order to meet those standards of quality, X number of students need to be involved. North Dakota is a very small scale state, and so that's why when we partnered with Montana, South Dakota, Washington, not all of our schools needed to participate in order to meet the standard of scale to have the validity of a quality assessment. So again, but even if we had all 110,000 of our students participating in a field test, I don't believe that even 110,000 students would meet the quality, the scale of necessity in order to meet the standardized, just like automotive industries meet those standards.
So
all of ours most certainly would. It wouldn't be voluntary in North Dakota.
Greg, do you have a comment before we move on?
Yeah, the field test was not a field test of a test.
You're talking about the Smarter Balance earlier.
Right. In 2014, in March, when the field test was conducted, it was a field test of items. And so students across North Dakota and across all the participating Smarter Balance states received various types of items, not a single test that was deployed. The purpose of the field test, of any field test, is to test out the quality of an item. It identifies the items that will excel and those that get dumped into the toilet. And there's a general
rule by items.
a test question.
Okay,
A test question. Yeah.
I just want to make sure.
And that's when we deployed our teachers in North Dakota to go down, from North Dakota, to go down and with other teachers to go take a look at those thousands and thousands of test questions. So again, we trusted our North Dakota teachers to contribute to that, to say this didn't align, this was not a good question, and they spent weeks going over those test questions. So it was a test of the test questions. And so our teachers went down and said, that was a good one, that was appropriate for 4th grade, that was appropriate for a second language learner, that was appropriate for a student with special needs, that isn't, that is, that isn't, that isn't.
I sat in on